A very good Monday afternoon to you guys. Hope you've had a wonderful weekend and are started already on a rockstar awesome week. Welcome to the Resplendent Window radio show. This is kind of an old-fashioned styled audio room that I've been wanting to do something like this for close to 20 years, which is crazy. Stephanie, thank you so much for being the first one in here. I appreciate you. Way back in the day, from 2000, actually that's not true. From 1997 to 2019, I had a radio career, and I was on the radio when I was in high school. At the time, it was my biggest endeavor and dream. That experience led to me being able to get hired right away as a freshman coming into the college that I went to. And then, of course, that led to a whole bunch of other opportunities. But in 2003, I started this radio show called The Appetizer. And it was built around the idea that let me backtrack. It was built around the idea, metaphorically, that we eat different types of food because it's healthy for us. We should listen to different types of music because it's also healthy for us. And I worked at a public radio station that allowed me to be able to experience all kinds of different things that I didn't really grow up hanging around or being a part of. I wasn't a super cultured person when I was in high school or middle school or elementary school. And I became quickly much more cultured in the public radio world, being surrounded by all kinds of different types of classical music and news and insights and culture and whatnot. And so I got tired of listening to the same boring 8 to 12 songs repeated over and over again on the radio. Way back in the day, I hear from my friends that tell me that radio hasn't changed much in the last 20 years. I don't spend much time with it, so I don't really know. But all of that to say that after I grew the show and I did all this syndicated stuff myself, I read Dale Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And in that book, I learned some very valuable lessons, but that was really the basis for how I went about marketing myself and marketing my show to get picked up by other radio stations in mostly the independent radio markets and small nonprofit stations, public radio, community radio, stuff like that. Anyhow, right after I started getting picked up by these radio stations, I started going back for some reason and listening to these old radio shows from the 1920s and 1930s, and I don't know what it was about that, other than it was radio drama, and it was interesting, and it was storytelling without a visual representation. I'm a very visual person, but there was something about that really captivated my imagination. It made me go, you know what, it would be really cool to bring this old classic form of entertainment back. But at the time, I didn't have any idea what that would look like, how I would do it, what the shows would be about. I kind of started playing around with some things, but it really was just this notion and this idea right around 2005 or 6, I think. And so it just sat in my cranium for a long time. And then something happened. Over the last 3 or 4 years in particular, I really got into writing stories, writing a lot of fictional stories, and feel like a big part of my calling in the world, calling from God, is to be a vessel and a channel and a conduit for these messages, and conveying them in storytelling form, and then presenting that as a way for people to understand themselves, understand their journey, and understand their connection with God in a way that just using the self-help, personal development ways of doing things doesn't necessarily do. And so that's the hugest, biggest part of the work that I do as a storyteller. And then what I've found in my own journey is that as I'm channeling these stories, and as I'm receiving these just very interesting ways of looking at life and looking at the world and turning it into a storytelling narrative, that there's always a story beneath the story that's going on. And I think that that's what the greatest spiritual teachers have conveyed to us. I grew up in a very religious background, very very Christian religious background, Southern Baptist, and then Church of Christ, and then Charismatic, and then Presbyterian, and I've really danced the dance. But with all of that, there was a whole lot of just different kinds of Bible study things that I've experienced. And Jesus communicated in parables most of the time when he was conveying something of serious importance. And there's a whole thing that I'm learning that when you can communicate through a story to explain something that has so much depth to it and so much meaning to it, that you're really trusting in the person who's listening or who's reading to be able to do that deep dive themselves. And you're also trusting God in that process, that what it is that you're conveying is going to be communicated and received in a way that is deeper and more personal than something that you could try to communicate and try to just share directly with that human being. So with that in mind, that's what this whole platform is all about. And the reason it's called the Resplendent window is I heard Wayne Dyer use that terminology to describe the way that we are able to see ourselves differently if we will change the way that we look at things. He has a quote that goes like this. He said, "When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change." And in the course of my life and in the course of my spiritual journey and coming into a closer, deeper, more unified one relationship with the Almighty, with the divine, with God, with love, I've had to change the way that I look at myself, and I've had to change the way that I look at the world, and I've had to change the way that I look at life, and I've had to change the way that I look at God. And I say that I've had to change that because if I chose to stay the same, if I chose to see things the way that I'd always seen them, then nothing would ever shift inside of me. And so much of our journey in life, and this is LinkedIn, so much of our journey in business is about being open and willing to shift our perspectives, and being open and willing to recognize that we don't have all of the answers, and we're probably not ever going to. And maybe this idea of seeking after answers is missing the boat altogether. What if it's not about finding the answers, but it is about asking better questions? And so what I want to share with you guys this time around, and then I'll open the space up after it's over, after I read the story, for some discussion and some questions and some insights and some feedback from you, because I would really love to hear what your thoughts are, is I wrote this story last week. It came to me, as most of my stories do, when I was on a walk one morning. This little scene just kind of popped in front of me in my head, and I just allowed myself to be entertained and enlightened by this experience. And so my hope and my intention for you in this time that we have today is for you to be enlightened and inspired and also entertained, especially as we begin the week. And hopefully this will give you some fodder for doing your own exploration and deep dive into these mysteries. But one of the big things that I talk about all the time, both in my personal and spiritual growth storytelling, as well as the work that I do with clients in helping them get into the heart of their story, to connect their story and their mission with the hearts and souls of their customers and clients, is that if we will look and realize that there is always a story beneath the story, and that's really what we're trying to do when we're working with other people. The surface level stuff will get us so far, but the story beneath the story, that's really where the magic is at. And so with that, I now present to you this short story. It's called The Curious and Cosmically Mysterious Case of Iman Green. And I have it written out as a news article or something that you would find in a magazine like Vanity Fair or GQ or something like that. And so the story takes place in Lexington, Nebraska. Here we go. Joe Green was at a loss for words and trying to describe his son after a multitude of weeks' worth of inquisitions. I didn't really get the standard prep work with my first child to know what being a dad was like. I mean, we had the typical poopy diapers everywhere and getting puked on randomly kind of baby thing after he was born, but he didn't do regular kid stuff. He liked airplanes and construction vehicles and Superman as a young child, but he didn't want to play sports, so we never really put him in anything, his father stated introspectively. This is part of what led me here, to learn about this unusual and fascinating young man. College recruiters from all over the country are breaking normal protocols of having only digital interactions with potential students to persuade them to sign on with their schools. Now, they've been flying out to this remote town in Nebraska to meet this young man and his family in a face-to-face setting. And they have been trying to come up with new and inventive ways to convince Iman Green to sign with their school for his college education, but none of the conventional or quote-unquote advanced ways have worked, which actually isn't surprising if you took any time to study this unusual teen and have heard the stories about him from his classmates, teachers, and community. Here's a kid who's got the physical build of an NFL running back, reminiscent of the great Bo Jackson in size and athletic ability, as you'll soon hear. Standing 6 foot 1 inches tall and weighing 215 pounds at 18 years of age. He wears freshly pressed dress shirts everywhere he goes, and yet his muscles and build can't hide behind the starched fabric on his chest and arms. He unofficially owns the school records for the fastest mile run, 40-yard dash, high jump, bench press, and runs scored in a single baseball game. And that's just in high school. His middle and elementary schools record him having strange and advanced athletic prowess much higher than his age range. But here's the thing. Colleges aren't trying to recruit Iman for his athletic abilities and potential. Why not? Because he never tried out for any teams. These school records are from his PE classes. He did play one season of baseball because the school had a hole in the lineup that would have kept them from being able to play their opening week's games due to an injury with one of the better players on the squad. With zero baseball experience, Iman stepped onto the field with a borrowed glove and found an innate ability to catch, field balls, throw further and harder than his teammates, and hit balls deep out, far beyond the fence line. His record of most runs scored was 25 in week 6 of the season. He hit 3 grand slams by himself. That game alone plastered his name all over the state and put him on the all-state team instantly. He moved to pitcher as a closer in that game just to give it a try. After that game, the team rotated him in as closer every chance they could. He was clocked at having a 92 mile per hour curve ball. I kept trying to throw it like a fastball to get the speed and accuracy on it right, but I have to grip it like a curveball. That's the science of it, but I know where to put the ball in the glove that fools the batter into thinking he's got a chance when he doesn't. It's just physics, Iman said with a shrug as he talked baseball for just a moment. It's an interesting dynamic to someone with such natural talent. His talent actually is most encapsulated in his mind, not in his muscle, and he doesn't say anything willy-nilly. Every word has a purpose, point, and meaning. He gives everything he says specific and select honor. It makes the old adage of, "I'm a man of my word," have a more poignant and accurate meaning, which brings up a massive question for his college recruiters. Why would someone so unique and athletically skilled not be owning the field and the mound as an all-star pitcher and batter his senior year? And what would make colleges from nearly every state so enthusiastically interested in him? Maybe it's the whole GPA thing, Iman replied with a shrug and a sly smile when asked what he'd done to generate such wide interest in his next steps of academia. Being coy wasn't something he seemed to intend on acting as, but came as a more simplistic means of explaining himself. Maybe because Iman Green has an official GPA of 4.14, or pi plus 1, as his friends joke when asked about the subject. School administrators can't explain it either. His grades have been run through every database, software, and algorithm in education, and the numbers always come out the same. 4.14. Even taking his test scores in six weeks grades down to 100, notice they were higher than that on his report cards, he still comes out with a beyond perfect 4.0 GPA. What kind of miracle genius kid is he? He probably has the code for curing AIDS and cancer and every other major disease in that magical cranium of his. He knows microbiology like no one else on earth. No hyperbole. The kid's mind is from another planet or galaxy. He's literally the smartest person in any room. But you never know because he just sits quietly, asks great questions, and then finds a way to make you laugh and feel good about yourself. I want him to skip college altogether and run for president already. Screw having to be 18 or 21 or whatever those old rules are. He's already got a better head on his shoulders and a purer heart, more wisdom, and tons more empathy than any of those clowns in D.C., Janet Garfield said passionately when asked about her friendship with Iman. This perspective was particularly interesting because it reveals more of the mysterious aspects of this uniquely magnificent young man. Is he really someone from this world? Because his holistic magnificence seems to be otherworldly. Janet was Iman's science teacher in his 9th and 10th grade years. She also runs the local science club and mentor program in their small Nebraskan community that had adult members with school-aged mentees learning from professionals in various fields of science. Lexington, Nebraska is the remote location of 7 different medium-sized companies, all that specialized in advances in the biological sciences. Tucked away from the auspices of tech cities like Los Angeles, Austin, Houston, or Seattle, this place doesn't register on the map unless you know what's here and come looking for it. And if you're a curious microbiologist, it becomes a gateway into a Monte Cristo of potential fortune, making Iman Green the Count who might just hold the keys to the kingdom of possibilities for unheard of advances in biological science, as well as technology and business. The local science mentorship program is also a fascinating addition to this community because it's something that it has been modeled in different ways in other cities, but not like this. Similar to Big Brothers Big Sisters programs, but for science nerds, or that's how Janet describes it. And Iman is one of the group's most ardent members. Ronnie Thomas was matched with Iman initially as his mentor, and they hit it off immediately. Rodney worked for a company here that is working on advanced studies on brain sciences and studying the subconscious mind to bring healing to diseases without the use of medicine or machine-related treatments, Janet recounted. While it started off great, tragedy hit shortly afterwards. Rodney was struck by a drunk driver while taking his dog for a walk. He survived, but was in a coma for 2 weeks and lost the use of his legs. Upon hearing of the accident and Rodney's hospitalization, Iman rushed to bridge the gap and help his mentor in a multitude of ways. He would take care of mowing Rodney's lawn and help his kids with their homework, and read novels to Rodney while he rested to give him some entertainment and interaction other than TV. Iman believed that what Rodney was doing with his neuroscience work was the cutting edge of using science and something close to spirituality to heal the world. He saw the value in Rodney's research and decided to be a medium for bridging and bringing that to the real world by fostering it with the man who was instrumental in initiating the practice, Janet articulated. Rodney's work had been experimental up to that point, with no human subjects to run his theories on, until now. He became his own guinea pig, with Iman overseeing and spearheading the process. Yet here's this 16-year-old quote-unquote kid doing scientific, microbiological, and neuroscientific work on as adults at a postdoctorate skill level, and performing it like it's old hat for him, like he's been doing it for eons. His results are part of what has colleges vying for him to join into their programs because it defies what science has said is possible for medicine for a very long time. Rodney now not only has fully healed and recovered from the paraplegia he suffered, but he is actually more in tune with his body and able to do things that previously he'd not been able to. Physically, he's stronger, more flexible, and says he feels younger than he did at age 40. Now at 56 years old, he's practicing hiking and mountain biking and trying out snowboarding just for kicks, Janet said passionately as she recalled the transformation that has happened. Iman is the centerpiece of it all. I can't take any credit. God works in mysterious ways, and he certainly works through that young man, Rodney replied when asked about the experience. The mysterious healing of Rodney somehow was missed in national news, potentially due to so many media outlets covering the massive storms and wildfires that have spread throughout most of the country, paired with the tumultuous antics of the ongoing presidential debates. Yet miracles seem to be something of a fairly regular occurrence here in Lexington, and a not so abnormal experience for those in the vicinity of Iman Green. So what does the fate of this remarkable teenager have to do with entertainment, or with the magazine you're reading this story in? Neuroscience, spirituality, and the phenomenal abilities of a high schooler in a remote town in America likely isn't something that you would seek out to find in your day. So why should you care? I asked myself this question repeatedly on my way out to meet the Greens in the town of Lexington that stands on the Platte River on the other side of the state from Lincoln and Omaha. The top schools in neurobiology like Harvard, Columbia, and Johns Hopkins universities have all been actively trying to recruit Iman for the past 3 years for just his brain. Add to that Division I baseball programs from Texas, Mississippi, Arkansas, Alabama, Florida, Arizona, Michigan, and Tennessee, just to name a few, all sending their best recruiters to offer everything but cold hard cash to the Greens for just the chance to have a conversation with potentially the nation's most skilled, smartest, and undercover secret athlete. Is Iman Green a Greek god disguised as a teenage science nerd? Or is a real-life Clark Kent happen to be of African-American heritage and tucked away in a rural part of Nebraska inside a farm not in Kansas? Yet so far, the young genius has passed on every offer that's been presented to him. What does this super talented genius, athletically powerful and gifted young man want? How can an organization with near limitless power, offerings, and resources convince a young man to join forces with their program if the regular bargaining chips and methods are completely ineffective? Why is it so hard to get this person to commit to where he's taking his future? And is this indecisiveness indicative of our culture and society's youth being so lackadaisical with certain areas of life, or unwilling, unable to make a choice because of the limitless options and choices available to him? This is worth exploring further. And this is where the real story is. This is what intrigued me the most to venture away from my office in New York, overlooking the bay, to come to a part of the country reserved for people who hate big cities and want the protection of anonymity. I believe this is what intrigues you too, and why this story is worth exploring. Because every one of us has motivations that are both singularly unique and also interconnected with each other. We seem to all want the same thing as humans. Number one, we want to be safe and know that there is security in our lives, including our physical, emotional, financial, and psychological needs and dynamics. Number two, we all want love, to be loved, and to believe that we are worthy of love in both a romantic sense as well as our interpersonal relationships. And number three, most, if not all of us, want to experience some level of success and have ambitions for how to use our talents to make an impact on the world. Beyond that, our motivations become more esoteric and unique, which is what recruiters of any form seek to tap into in order to convince someone to take advantage of their offers and join forces together. There's a sales dynamic to this that is both overt and covert at the same time. Money is usually a powerful force here because money taps into the psychological and physical needs of security, provision, safety, freedom, and the desire for prosperity. It's also usually the go-to choice, while sticking to the legalities of what can and cannot be offered, to convince a person to say yes, which may lead you to think that Iman's interest is not in the financial gains that he could achieve because the Greens are a wealthy family. This is not the case. Though they do afford a modest, comfortable living, they are not among the nation's top 1% financially. What we might ponder but not readily explore is this. What if there are more people like Iman Green than we know? Individuals capable of inexplainable phenomena, but who aren't here to try and become famous or make millions of dollars with their talents and gifts. What if there are individuals gifted with almost superhero-like powers who aren't motivated by wealth, fame, or recognition by the masses like the average person or teenager seems to be? And what if these unique and amazing individuals are actually real-life inspirational young people who are already leaving a dynamically powerful legacy in their communities before they ever leave home to go make a name for themselves as adults? Maybe the power of this story is what Iman Green has to say. I'll decide who I want to be and where I want to leave my mark on the world in my own time. Not right now, but when I'm ready, I'll move but not because anyone told me that I have to, or because anyone else's vision for my future is how I have to see it. Now, those are my words, not his. But from the conversations we had together, I can see that could be how he feels about having to answer these unspoken questions. While talking with his siblings, I heard all sorts of amazing stories of things he'd done to help out the family, teach his younger sister and brother about life, and inspire them to believe in themselves. Jacqueline and Jamon Green are both brilliant kids, acing their way through 6th and 9th grades, while Draymond Green takes more interest in sports and being an all-star in basketball, track, and football. Yet there was one story that really impacted me that Draymond shared regarding the impact his brother had on him beyond the quote-unquote normal big brother stuff. A few years back, 2 kids started picking on Draymond at the park by their house during a pickup basketball game, and he tried to ignore them. Name-calling escalated to threats, and then the younger Green's son found himself in a minor scuffle with 4 older teenagers who seemed to have some unspoken vendetta against him. 2 of them came at me and tried to hit me. I knew I was stronger than them, even though they were older than me, and I was taught to respect myself, so I hit back. My dad taught me some boxing, but never encouraged me to fight anyone. Still, I thought if I hit back, they'd back down, because bullies are supposed to be weak, right? But these guys just called their friends over and joined in, Draymond recalled, shaking his head in frustration. Now the scene had the younger Green brother surrounded by a group of angry bullies ranging in age from 16 to 19. 2 of these boys had bloody lips after their exchange with Draymond, and the tension was mounting around the scene quickly, as was an audience of onlookers. And among the onlookers was none other than Draymond's brother, Iman. Iman watched his younger brother stare down these vengeful kids who were yelling cruel and horrible things at Draymond and making threats against him and his family. Draymond didn't say a word, didn't ask for help, and never backed down. One of the bullies saw Iman standing there and said something aloud, which made the ringleader bully turn his attention to Iman. "You gonna just stand there while I beat the crap out of your little brother with my boys here? You weak as he is," the lead bully shouted. Iman then stepped forward and stood between the leader of the gang and his brother. He didn't raise his fists, nor did he seem to engage in the showdown of power in the typical ways that a playground fight usually happens. It was how Iman responded in this moment that was the most baffling and the most insightful of who he is as a young man. If I hit you and take on your friends and we fight, things only get worse. I beat you up, or you get some hits on me maybe, but you go get your brothers and your crew. It escalates and turns into a war. And over what? Because you don't like Dre's shoes or something else that's petty? You let your fists in your mouth scream out in anger, but it's your heart that's hurting the most. Your heart wants to have a voice, but you won't listen to it. So fear is speaking for you through your mouth. And all your pain at home with your family just gets worse because no one is listening to the only voice that matters the most, Iman articulated calmly, not taking his eyes, energy, or attention away from the one person who had incited this entire thing. His words did something instantly. His presence did too. Slowly, the gang started to back away, shaking their heads and jeering at the green boys for being punks as the bullies wandered off. Except for the main ringleader standing directly in front of Iman and Draymond. He never moved. He stayed, looking Iman in the eyes as tears streamed down his face. How did you know? The young teen whimpered. The young man's family had experienced months of tumultuous drama and problems, including being evicted from their home, domestic violence issues that involved CPS, and his father's ongoing substance abuse taking its toll after his mother left the household. Feeling desperate, angry, and confused, the teenage boy found himself fighting with strangers to be the only coping mechanism that brought any relief. And who better to fight and take his frustrations out on in dealing with the emotional and psychological chaos of a broken family than the youngest son of the quote-unquote mint green family. Yet by not interceding and physically engaging in the dramatic scene, Iman met the teenager's broken heart exactly where he was, with compassion and empathy instead of violence. This moment would lead to the young teen's family getting some much-needed assistance, therapy, and mentorship within the community. I asked Draymond if he was upset that his brother didn't defend him in a more pronounced way instead of potentially watching from the sidelines as the gang tried to rough him up more. Yeah, I was upset for a minute. I mean, my bro and I have a tight relationship, and that's not something that would fly with me and one of my friends, but later he told me that he knew I was strong enough to take him and take care of myself, and I don't need him to save me. I could have taken at least 3 or 4 of them on my own before the numbers got to be too much. But Iman saw what no one else could, and that's what he does that no one else can. He sees into the heart and soul of people, and somehow knows their story better than they do. He's able to address the real cause of problems instead of just messing with the effects and making everything worse, Draymond replied philosophically. There's a ton of wisdom pouring out of the Green family, apparently. Who are the parents of these remarkable kids, and how did they produce such incredible offspring? What is the secret of Mauricia and Joe Green? We're not that different from most people, I don't think, Mauricia replied with a shrug and a smile that was reminiscent of how her son responded to my introspective questions. We want to do right by people and have them treat us the same, the golden rule and all of that. We raised our kids to do their best and be respectful. And we just happen to have such respectful, truly good-hearted kids. It's a blessing, she said with a gentle smile. The attention that Lexington, Nebraska and the Green family have experienced over the last few months from people who previously didn't know of either's existence is a blessing and quite a remarkable one to note. Yet Iman and the Greens seem like all of this curiosity, and even me as a writer for one of the world's largest magazine publications, it's just a regular day at the office for them. It's that air of authentic and genuine coolness that makes this story, this family, and this young man so different, refreshing, and uncommon. No matter where he ends up going, what he ends up doing, or which path he chooses to take, it's going to bless people at every step along the way. And it will be his decision, independently of any outside force, to coerce him into how that happens, which might end up being the real power that's being shown here to us in this story. The power to choose on your own accord for who we want to be and what impact we want to make. The question then becomes, will we follow suit and be like Iman, or continue to walk down the path we always have, allowing outside influences to determine who we end up being and where we go in life? What will you choose? And I conclude all of my stories as typical with a new beginning. Now, once again, this story came to me on a walk one morning and didn't reveal itself as something that you would read in a regular publication, not something like GQ or Vanity Fair, until I sat down and I began writing it. And that's when it began pouring out to me like something that I would have read when I was working in the radio for NPR and reading an NPR or an Associated Press news headline. And that's how the story progressed from there. And it's posed this existential question to me, and I'm going to pose it now to you, of what would it be like if there was some sort of Superman/Jesus-like person who existed in our modern day world, but who was not motivated by the common things that most of us seem to be addicted to or trying to create or quote unquote manifest. And what would someone like this possibly do if presented with these opportunities to change the world in an unconventional way? Fly up into outer space, or do something crazy to get attention, or hit people and meet people exactly where they are. And I'm curious what you think about this subject and the questions that I've posed here in this story. And if you're open to it, I welcome Stephanie. It would be just you because you're the only one here, but I'd love to have a conversation with you about that. If you'd like to come in and chat about your thoughts about the story and anything else for that matter. All right. Welcome, my friend. Good to see you.
Okay, I'm figuring this out. This is the first time I've been on a live recording in LinkedIn. So can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay, so can you ask the question again?
Well, there's a couple questions. Which one would you like me to ask again?
Can you just recap the very ending? Can you just say that part again? Because I was fumbling around trying to unmute.
So, this story came to me as something I was thinking about on a walk. Like, what if there was like this Superman / Jesus-like person that was a high school kid, not, an adult, doing, wearing a cape or, flying around and doing superhero-like stuff. But what if there was somebody that legit had just incredible physical prowess, but also incredible genius prowess, but also like could just, had like Christ consciousness? Like what would it be like? What would that be like to find out about someone with these kinds of abilities and then get to have a conversation with them? What would that be like?
Well, I think that's what life is. Like, every person is made in the image of God, and you touched on this, where there's a uniqueness to each person, but there's also a thread of unity. And so I feel like what came up for me was how important this message is really for the younger generation, yes, and also just anyone to know that they actually have that. Like what you're describing in this young, like fictional young man could be a description for anyone. And you talked about this too, but it's our choice. Like we get to choose to believe that or not, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the hard part is we live, I can speak from my own experience. We live in a culture. I'm in the culture, the American culture, which is so, there's such an emphasis on like fitting a certain mold. It's weird because there's a tension of, we're supposed to, we hear the phrase, you do you, but the problem with that is if I'm not embracing who I am in a way that is like the mainstream popular thing, then there's like very little ability to actually embrace uniqueness and unity. So anyways, I could keep going, but I'm going to pause there.
By all means, keep going, Stephanie. Like there's no, you have the floor, my friend.
Well, yeah, there's someone else in here listening.
Hey, Sean, good to see you, buddy.
Sean came in. Well, no, I think for now that's all I'm going to say.
Well, thank you. Well, do you mind sharing, like, what were your thoughts on the story itself?
Well, I think they're like the story itself. I just see a theme, like the importance of heart motive. I'm taking a moment to process.
It's all good.
I don't know. I think the story itself, in all honesty, I'm amazed that you can have such level of detail about a fictional story. Because that, like, I was having I personally was having a hard time visualizing, but the whole story you said just came to you from a walk, or it came to you while you were walking. And so I think that struck me, that you developed such a in-depth, involved story that is fictional.
Mm-hmm. So it was hard to visualize?
Well, yeah, that's for me. I sometimes have a hard time visualizing things. That's not reflective of your writing abilities. That's more reflective of that's more reflective of me. I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Well, I the way that the story came to me was it was just a scene, and that's the way that it always is. Usually there's just a scene that pops into my head, and I let it play out as I'm walking, and then when I get home, I did it with this one. Usually I'll write with pen and paper, and then translate it over into typing it up in some sort of digital form. But the idea of it being a magazine article didn't come to me until I sat down to write it. And I wrote a short story this morning too. I'm actually working on one that the idea that's very similar. A scene popped into my head on Friday. I think I told you about this in one of the messages I left you. And just this scene popped into my head, and I've just been sitting with it, not trying to turn it into anything. But when I sat down to write it, the way that I wrote it came out completely differently than the way that I had originally seen it. So it's just I think this is part of my evolution. Like, things just kind of come, and I am allowing myself to understand it and process it in maybe a different way when I'm actually composing it. And I think that's, I don't know if you do this, but I'm a pretty avid journaler. And what I used to do is I used to write in my journal and tell like the history of what happened in different experiences. And lately I don't journal that way. Lately I write a little bit about what happened, but I'm asking myself questions as though I'm like digging deeper into the experience and allowing myself to understand the nuances and understand myself, and maybe even just like ask questions that I don't necessarily need answers to, but it's in the exploration of just asking the question that becomes the more like revealing sort of thing.
That's really good. The power of asking questions. And I realize that, I do journal, but it's more like I find I do a lot of prayer journaling. And then I have gone through phases of more reflective, historical journaling, but I'm feeling challenged in a really good way to be more, I don't know if the word is right, introspective, but just more curious, because I feel like that was something, part of what impressed me about your writing is how creative it is, right? Mm-hmm. And I feel like that was something that was taken from me as a child. And that's something that I have sat with God in, of like, I want my creative ability back. Like, I want to be able to visualize things better. And so I think that I would like to go deeper into journaling in a way, in the way that you just described.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that. That's that's really powerful. Like, so what used to be some of your creative endeavors that you enjoyed?
My gut reaction to answer is I'm not sure if I've ever actually had a hobby Like when I look back, the things that I did, like playing soccer, was because I was told to do it. So I think this is actually the first time in my life where I'm actually exploring hobbies that I'm doing because I enjoy doing them and they're a creative outlet.
Wow. That's interesting. So like, so is it kind of like you're getting to explore what it means to have fun?
Yes, to enjoy. And it's like, because I guess this was part of the story too, was you're describing a person who wasn't influenced by the world, like the way of the world, right? What was what we could call popular. And so I do feel very much like I'm probably for the first time in my life really pursuing things in a way of life that is being motivated to enjoy life, even in the hard things.
Yeah. Sweet. That's refreshing.
Yeah. It's a different way to live, and I think that's what our world needs more of right now, is just empowering people to embrace their like what maybe could be labeled as weirdness, you know?
Totally.
It's like just giving people, and it's not in like, because I feel like there's an element in the world right now where that's encouraged, but it's not. Some of the embracing weirdness, I actually think what's manifesting is coming out of unresolved heart wounds, right? But to really, like, in the best way I can encourage other people to like, embrace their weirdness is for me to embrace my own weirdness, right? In like a really healthy and whole way. So, yeah.
Right on embracing weirdness. I'm immediately reminded of my dear friend Kevin Moreau. If you don't know Kevin, I'd be happy to make an introduction to him. He is he has a podcast and a show here on being a misfit, and he's like, I consider him to be kind of the head ringleader of us misfits, and I'm putting myself in that category too, because like it is exactly that. It's those of us who don't feel like we fit in, and I know that I don't fit in, and for the longest time I wanted to, but I now have gotten into this place of just embracing, like, no, dude, I was made for something much bigger and better than a box that anybody could put me in, and you are too, and actually I believe all of us are. Like, the idea of compartmentalization and conformity. It's interesting. I've been thinking about this a lot over the last several months, actually. How, at least for me, I spent most of my adolescence and teenage years trying so hard to fit in and being so frustrated with not being able to do that. And now in my, 40s, I'm so thankful that I don't fit in. I don't ever want to fit in. Like, that's not something that I like. That's not something I ever want to even like attempt to try to do again. And Kevin is really good about presenting these different, dynamic aspects of our uniqueness, and very similar to myself, being an encouragement and an empowerment to those of us that feel like we've been misunderstood and, cast out of different groups of people, but, also at the same time finding our tribe of, fellow weirdos that get things the way that we get them.
It's really good. There's a difference between unity and uniformity. And so you're describing a spirit of unity within the tribe of weirdos or the tribe of misfits, right? Whereas the spirit of uniformity says that we all have to look alike for the sake of looking alike. And to me, a lot of that is rooted in fear, a lot of fear.
Totally. Yeah, like, yeah. In finding some sort of sense of safety in surrounding yourself with sameness.
Yeah, it's weird because I feel like the spirit of uniformity, which is driven by fear, it's like chasing after a false security in a way. It's like when we all look the same, it's almost mistaken for comfort, but it's not true comfort. It's just familiar.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really boring. Like the spirit of unity just I don't know, it just paints a better picture. It tells a better story.
Mm-hmm. Well, I believe, and I think this is, it's a spiritual truth and it's a psychological one and a bunch of other different things too, but like we get to experience ourselves mirrored back to us in different ways. And, so when I can recognize the brilliance and the genius and the creativity and the beauty in somebody else, it's because that is also in me. And to have these opportunities where that creativity and that sparkle and that shine is present and that uniqueness is present, and that's something that makes you feel like, wow, I'm really in the presence of somebody that's so incredible and so magnificent that I'm just honored to be here. Like pausing and going, wait, if I can see that in them, then that means that that's also in me. And in a place of uniformity where everybody looks the same and everybody acts the same and there is no differences or there's no like real sparkle, it's just like, a bunch of bland saltine crackers. Like there's no flavor in that. And that's not a very fun space, or doesn't sound like one.
It's a lot of stagnation. There's not room for it. It's like a sterile environment. Mm-hmm. I had another thought came up, but then it went away. I can't remember. That happens sometimes too, right?
Yeah. Well, hopefully it'll come back.
Okay. Well, is this like a goes like on a podcast or something? You know how I'm kind of removed from the social media or the media stuff.
Yeah. So, since you're my sole guest today, I can. Here's what happens on these audio rooms. As soon as I end it, it will disappear off of LinkedIn, and nobody can go back and re-listen to it. I record it so I can put it on YouTube, unless you don't want your voice to be heard, and then I'll just archive it for myself for my own listening.
No, you can put it on YouTube.
Okay, thank you.
I have to, that's like a fear that I have to get. That's part of embracing uniqueness, in my opinion, is I don't need to worry what other people think about what I said. So.
Well, you're brilliant, Stephanie, and you bring so many wonderful points to, you brought so many wonderful points to this conversation, and you were the bold, brave person to be the one person to speak with me today, and to sit. You've been here since I started the thing at 4:00. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here.
You're welcome. Thank you for being brave and putting yourself out there.
It doesn't seem like bravery, but I appreciate your acknowledgement.
To me, I'm like, wow, this is a bold move. Yeah.
So is something like this, like, I don't know, being on stage or presenting something that you've created, is that something that scares you or something that gives you a little bit of like excitement or what?
This is, I definitely feel nervous right now. And it's the funny thing is it's not even my thing. So I'm trying to like lean into that, right? Like this is a calculated risk. And so I think it could be my thing. There's just some things that are still being worked out in me, so that it doesn't feel so much like I want to vomit kind of a feeling. And this is like more, it's like, remember when we were talking, it's like transitioning from terrifying to exhilarating.
Okay.
Yeah.
So where are you on the spectrum of terrifying to
Right
exhilarating?
now?
Yeah.
Probably smack dab in the middle.
Okay. That's a
Feeling a little bit of both.
better place than being over on the teetering on the edge of terrified.
Yeah, no, I know it's like a healthy. I really think the biggest root of nervousness that I'm feeling is caring what other people think, and that's none of my business, which you have reminded me of in your book, the Be Solid book. So I just get to, because I mean, this goes back to the story you just told today. Like, how much are we letting what other people think or potentially think dictate the decisions that we're making? And that, I have learned, is such a creativity squasher. Like, to just, like, for me, you talked about Jesus, and Jesus talks about how he goes after the one. And, like, today you had one show up, right? Like, what would it look like if we were driven more by just showing up for the one who needs to hear what we have to say, instead of trying to create a massive following of people that really, in reality, like, if we're being honest with all the massive followings, like, we really just want people following us. It's an external source of security to reinforce an identity that isn't our true identity. So I'm being reminded to not let what other people think dictate the decisions that I make, and to be courageous, to show up even for the one,
Well, I appreciate you being the one to show up today. Also,
yeah.
Not that my opinion should sway you in any way, shape, or form, but you really are absolutely brilliant, Stephanie. And you have a wonderful voice, and your energy is something that's such a delight to experience. So you have blessed me exponentially by just having you here as somebody to listen, but even more so by you coming in here and having this conversation and interaction with me. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, I think I'm gonna wrap up the show, but you and I'll be talking. Yeah. You and I'll be talking anyways.
Yep.
All right.
Sounds good.
Have a great rest of your day.
You too. Bye.
See ya. All right. So I think that I'm going to make Mondays at 4 p.m. Central Daylight Time or Standard. Is it Central Daylight Time or Central Standard Time? I can never remember. Somehow there's a difference between the two. I don't know, but 4 I think will be the new time slot for this show, the Resplendent window. So if you were listening to this on the replay on YouTube, I do this show live on LinkedIn and then record it and publish it and all that stuff over on the YouTubes. So, and maybe one day I'll bring it to Noom /vibe or Noom Vibe or whatever it is, whatever wisdom is now. That's where I first started doing these audio shows, but we will see. We shall see. But until next time, appreciate you being with me, listening in any way, shape, or form. More stories like this for your cranium and your heart and your spirit are available at growthfarming.com, along with some awesome insights, wisdom, and courses that will transform your life, your relationships, and your consciousness. Once again, at growthfarming.com. Okay, I'm D. Grant Smith. This is the Resplendent Window. I'll see you later.